The check sat on the table, $1 million. Kurt Cobain stared at it, his fingers picking at a loose thread on his flannel shirt. The number looked fake, like someone had photoshopped too many zeros. He'd grown up in Aberdeen, Washington, where his mother counted pennies for groceries. Where he'd slept under a bridge at 16 because there was nowhere else to go. Where $100 felt like winning the lottery. Now, 3 men in expensive suits were offering him more money than his family had seen in generations. For 30 seconds. 30 seconds holding a cologne bottle on camera. 30 seconds of pretending to be someone he wasn't. March 1993. Nevermind had sold 10 million copies. Kurt was the voice of a generation, the reluctant king of grunge. MTV played his videos on repeat. Teenagers spray-painted Nirvana on overpasses across America. But success hadn't made him comfortable. It made him more anxious, more aware how quickly everything could disappear. How quickly the world could decide he didn't matter anymore. "Mr. Cobain," the lead executive said, "this is a remarkable opportunity. 1 commercial shoot, 1 day, and financial security for your family." Richard Sterling, Senior VP of Marketing for Eclat Luxury Brands, slid the contract across the table. "We're not asking you to change who you are. We want authenticity. Young people trust you. When you endorse Eclat pour homme, they'll believe in us." Kurt said nothing. Francis, barely a year old. The house he'd bought. His childhood of hunger and fear. $1 million could build a wall between his daughter and the poverty he'd known. "Can I think about it?" The executives exchanged glances. Who turns down $1 million? "Of course," Sterling said, smile tightening, "but we need an answer by Friday." Tuesday. 3 days to decide whether to become everything he'd spent his life despising. That evening, Kurt sat in his Seattle home, contract on the coffee table. Courtney, upstairs with Francis. The house quiet except for a distant lullaby from the baby monitor. He picked up his beat-up Fender, held together with duct tape. Music had always been his way of processing the world. His mind drifted to Aberdeen. 9 years old, parents screaming about money. The divorce at 8. Being shuttled between parents who didn't want him. Showing up to school in the same clothes 3 days straight, and he remembered the perfume. Kurt stood abruptly, the memory hitting him. He walked to the window, staring at Seattle rain, but seeing the past. Christmas 1979. 12 years old, living with his mother in a small apartment that smelled like cigarette smoke and disappointment. No money. His mother crying for 3 days because she couldn't afford presents. Kurt had saved $43 from mowing lawns and collecting bottles. 6 months of work. 43 crumpled dollar bills hidden in a shoebox under his bed. He'd been planning to buy a cheap guitar from the pawn shop, his dream since hearing the Beatles on a neighbor's radio. He'd walk past that pawn shop every day after school, staring at the beat-up acoustic in the window, imagining the music he'd make. December 23rd, his mother sat at the kitchen table, head in hands, sobbing. Bills spread like accusations. Past due notices in red. A disconnection warning from the power company. A letter from the landlord about late rent. Kurt stood in the doorway, 12 years old, holding everything he had in the world. He looked at the $43, looked at his mother's shoulders shaking with sobs, made a decision that would haunt him for decades. Christmas morning, Kurt gave his mother a wrapped box. He'd wrapped it himself with newspaper comics because they couldn't afford wrapping paper. Inside, cheap drugstore perfume in a plastic bottle shaped like a rose. $12.99. He'd spent the rest on food that would last. Peanut butter, bread, eggs, milk, practical things. She opened it and started crying. Kurt's heart lifted for a moment. Maybe he'd done something right. Maybe for once, he'd made her happy. But these weren't happy tears. These were angry tears. "Where did you get money for this?" "I saved it, from mowing lawns." His voice was small, hopeful. "You spent your money on perfume?" She was almost screaming now. "Do you know how stupid that is? How useless?" He tried to explain. He'd wanted her to feel special, wanted her to have something nice, something that wasn't a bill or a responsibility or a reminder of how hard everything was. He'd thought if she had something beautiful, just one beautiful thing, maybe she'd smile again. Maybe she'd look at him with love instead of resentment. She threw the bottle across the room. It shattered against the wall, glass exploding, cheap perfume smell filling the apartment, sickeningly sweet. The smell would stay in that apartment for weeks, a constant reminder of his failure. I don't need perfume, Kurt. I need money. I need someone who can actually help, not some stupid kid wasting money on garbage that doesn't matter. 12 years old, watching perfume drip down the wall like tears, something inside him shattered too. He tried to do something kind, something meaningful, something loving, and it had been thrown back at him as worthless, just like him. That night, he ran away with his remaining $30.17, slept in a cardboard box behind the library, crying until he thought he'd throw up. He went back 2 days later, nowhere else to go. His mother never apologized, never mentioned it again, but Kurt never forgot. Courtney found Kurt at the window, lost in memory. "Hey," she said softly, "you've been weird since that meeting. They want to pay me $1 million to sell cologne." Courtney's eyes widened. $1 million? Kurt, it's more money than my family saw in 3 generations. Francis's college fund, security, everything we're supposed to want. But it's bullshit, Kurt said, voice rising. It's fake. Everything I've been fighting against. They want to use my face to sell expensive cologne to kids who can barely afford it. Kids like I was. He paced, agitated. They said they want authenticity. But there's nothing authentic about telling some kid in Aberdeen he needs a $90 bottle of cologne to be cool. That's exploitation. "Kurt, we have a daughter now," Courtney said gently. "This isn't just about principles. This is about Francis never going through what you went through." "You think I don't know that?" His voice cracked. "You think I don't lie awake terrified that all of this could disappear? That we could end up broke like my parents?" He sat heavily. "But if I sell out for money, what was the point? What was the point of those years in dive bars, sleeping in our van? What was the point of everything we stood for?" "Maybe the point was getting to a place where you have a choice," Courtney said carefully. Kurt looked at her, torn. She wasn't wrong, but she wasn't right either. Wednesday morning, Kurt called Chris Novoselic, Nirvana's bassist, his closest friend since high school. They met at a coffee shop. Kurt explained everything. Chris listened, then asked, "You remember why we started this band?" "To piss off our parents," Kurt smiled weakly. "Partly, but also because we hated the fakeness. 80s hair metal bullshit, bands that were just products. We wanted to be real." "That's why I can't—" "But here's the thing," Chris interrupted. "You're not that broke kid from Aberdeen anymore. You have Francis. Maybe taking care of your family is more punk rock than staying poor on principle." Kurt stared. "You're telling me to take the money?" "I'm telling you there's no wrong answer. If you take it, you're providing for family. If you don't, you're standing by values. Both matter. But you can't let a 12-year-old's trauma make this decision." The words hit hard. Chris was right. He was still that 12-year-old boy watching perfume drip down a wall, feeling worthless. Thursday evening, one day before deadline. Kurt called Richard Sterling. "Mr. Cobain, I'm glad you called. Have you decided?" "I have questions first. This cologne, how much?" $95 for 50 milliliters. A luxury product for... Who's your target demographic? Brief pause. Males age 16 to 30, middle to upper middle class. So teenagers, kids who look up to me. Yes, but kids who'll scrape together money for overpriced cologne because I told them it's cool. Kids who'll skip lunch to afford it? Sterling's voice became guarded. "Mr. Cobain, luxury brands have always..." "I grew up poor," Kurt said, voice quiet but intense. "Really poor, stealing food from school cafeterias because I hadn't eaten in 2 days. Sleeping in my car because I had nowhere else to go. Wearing the same clothes to school until kids made fun of me. I'm sorry, but I don't see how. Those kids you're targeting, some are like I was. They'll see me holding your cologne and think they need it. Think it'll make them matter. Think it'll make them less invisible. And they'll spend money they don't have on something that won't change anything. Because I told them to. Mr. Cobain, with all due respect, that's how advertising works. I know exactly how it works. That's the problem. You're asking me to exploit the trust kids have in me, to lie to them, to tell them buying your product will give them something it can't give them. And you're offering me $1 million to betray every kid who ever felt like I felt. Silence. Then Sterling's voice hardened. If you're not interested, we have other artists. I want to make you an offer, Kurt said suddenly. I'm listening. I'll do your commercial, but I want complete creative control. I write it, I direct it, you air whatever I make. No changes, no edits, no interference. Sterling laughed, but it wasn't friendly. That's not how. And I want $2 million. One for me. One donated to homeless shelters in Aberdeen and Seattle, for kids like I was. That's absurd. We're not. Then we don't have a deal. Thanks for your time. He hung up. His hands were shaking, but not from fear, from relief. Friday morning, the deadline. 17 missed calls, 12 from his manager, 3 from Sterling, 2 from other Eclat executives. He deleted them all without listening. He already knew what they'd say. Take the money, be smart, be practical, grow up. He spent the morning with Frances, watching her toddle around laughing at nothing and everything. She knocked over a tower of blocks and giggled like it was the funniest thing in the world. So innocent, so different from his childhood. She would never remember this moment, but Kurt would. He would remember deciding what kind of father he wanted to be. Noon. His manager arrived unannounced. Kurt, call them back. They're willing to negotiate. I don't want to make it work, Kurt said calmly. Do you understand what you're turning down? $1 million. This is... I know what it is, and I know what it isn't. What's that supposed to mean? Kurt picked up Frances. She grabbed his hair, tugging. It isn't worth what I'd have to become to take it. Kurt, you have responsibilities now. You can't just... Get out, Kurt said quietly. What? Get out of my house. I'm not doing the deal. I'm not calling them back. I'm done talking about this. His manager left, shaking his head, probably calling other clients to complain about stubborn rock stars who didn't understand the real world. Courtney came from the kitchen. You're really not taking it. I'm really not. She looked at him for a long moment, then smiled. Good. Yeah? Yeah. I married Kurt Cobain, not some corporate spokesperson. I'd rather be broke and real than rich and fake. Kurt kissed her. Frances squeezed between them, giggling and pulling his hair. We're not going to be broke, he said. We'll be fine. For the first time in days, he believed it. Not because he had $1 million, but because he had something money couldn't buy. 2 weeks later, Kurt was in a Seattle recording studio working on new material. The band was taking a break, drinking coffee, joking around. During the break, he told the sound engineer about the perfume deal, about the $1 million, about saying no. $1 million, Steve whistled. And you walked away? Told them to shove it. Man, that takes balls. Most people would have jumped at that. Kurt told him the rest, about his mother, the Christmas gift, the bottle shattering against the wall, the smell of cheap perfume mixing with disappointment and rage. Steve listened, really listened, the way good sound engineers do. Then he said something that surprised Kurt. You should write a song about it. Kurt looked up from his guitar. About turning down money? About all of it. Being poor, selling out, corporate assholes trying to buy your credibility. That Christmas with your mom. Make it real. Make it hurt. The idea caught like a hook in Kurt's mind. He could feel the song already forming, could hear the raw, angry chords, the lyrics that would make people uncomfortable. That night, alone in the studio, Kurt wrote Sell the Kids for Food, a raw, angry song about poverty, exploitation, and refusing to profit off people who trusted you. It poured out of him like blood from an old wound. They want to buy my face to sell their shit to kids who can't afford to eat. They think $1 million will make me just like them. But I remember being 12 and watching dreams break on the kitchen floor. The song never made it onto an album. Too personal, too raw, too specific, too real. But bootleg recordings circulated among fans, and the story spread through the grunge community like wildfire. A kid who'd grown up with nothing had been offered everything and said no. Not because he didn't need them, money, but because he refused to become the kind of person who exploited others the way he'd been exploited. Because some things can't be bought. Some things can't be sold. After Kurt's death in 1994, his journals were published. One entry from March 1993 stopped readers cold. They offered me $1 million today. $1 million fucking dollars. And all I could think about was being 12, giving my mom cheap perfume for Christmas, trying to make her happy, watching her throw it against the wall like it was garbage, like I was garbage. Money doesn't fix broken things. It just makes them heavier. It just gives you more to lose. I don't want Frances to grow up with money. I want her to grow up with values. I want her to know some things can't be bought and shouldn't be sold. I want her to know her dad was a lot of things, fucked up and depressed and angry and confused, but he wasn't for sale. That mattered more than being rich. That mattered more than being safe. I'd rather be broke and honest than rich and hollow. I'd rather sleep in my car again than look in the mirror and see someone I don't recognize. Someone who sold out every kid who believed in me for a fucking cologne commercial. Some of those kids are sleeping in their cars right now. Some of them are stealing food. Some of them are exactly where I was. And if I take that $1 million and tell them to buy expensive cologne, what am I saying to them? That they should become like me? That money fixes everything? That selling out is okay if the price is right? No, fuck that. Fuck all of that. That entry revealed the heart of Kurt Cobain. A man shaped by poverty who understood that selling out didn't just mean compromising your music. It meant compromising the trust of every kid who looked up to you and saw someone real. Someone who understood. Someone who wouldn't lie to them. The perfume company hired a different celebrity. The commercial was slick, professional, forgettable. It aired during the Super Bowl to millions and did nothing for sales. Authenticity can't be manufactured. The kids who loved Kurt loved him because he couldn't be bought. In 2010, Éclat pour Homme was discontinued. The brand never recovered. But Kurt Cobain's music, made on his own terms, without compromise, without corporate influence, continues to sell millions of copies decades after his death. His refusal to do that perfume commercial became part of his legend. A moment that proved he meant what he sang about. A moment that showed his values weren't just lyrics, they were his life. For kids growing up poor, growing up different, growing up feeling like they don't fit, Kurt's no to $1 million meant more than 1,000 yes answers ever could. He proved some things matter more than money, that integrity isn't for sale, that staying true to yourself, even when it costs you everything, is the most punk rock thing you can do. If this story of choosing values over money moved you, subscribe and share this video. Let us know in the comments, have you ever turned down something valuable because it went against who you are? Hit that notification bell for more stories about the real people behind the music legends.